Kunal Kamra is India's most controversial comedian who constantly lands in trouble for his bold political jokes and no-filter commentary. He first made headlines by mocking news anchor Arnab Goswami on a flight, calling him biased and dramatic to his face while recording it. This got him temporarily banned by several airlines. His habit of roasting powerful people doesn't stop there. He's been dragged to court multiple times for his tweets making fun of Supreme Court judgments, politicians like Yogi Adityanath, and even the Indian Army, with cases filed against him for sedition, defamation, and contempt of court. Unlike most comedians who avoid direct attacks, Kamra specifically names and shames politicians, judges, and media personalities in his acts, which has led to police complaints, legal notices, and public outrage. His podcast interviews, where he grills politicians with uncomfortable questions, have also created storms. While his young fans love him for speaking truth to power, authorities and right-wing groups keep trying to silence him through lawsuits and social media campaigns. From getting banned from flights to being fined by courts, Kamra's career shows how dangerous political comedy can be in India, yet he continues pushing boundaries despite all the backlash. Kunal Kamra has carved out a unique and contentious space in Indian comedy, emerging as one of the country's most fearless and divisive satirists. Unlike traditional comedians who stick to light-hearted observational humor about daily life, Kamra has built his entire brand on political and social commentary, deliberately provoking strong reactions from both his admirers and detractors. His journey from an unremarkable corporate job to becoming one of India's most talked about comedians is a story of rebellion against societal expectations and an unflinching commitment to speaking truth to power regardless of consequences. Born in 1987, Kamra followed the conventional path expected of middle-class Indian youth by earning an engineering degree and entering the corporate world. However, the monotony of office life and his growing disillusionment with India's political landscape led him to abandon financial stability for the unpredictable world of stand-up comedy. His early days performing in small Mumbai clubs were challenging, as he struggled to find his comedic voice amidst a scene dominated by safer, more relatable humor about relationships and family life. What set Kamra apart was his willingness to tackle taboo subjects, government policies, media bias, and institutional corruption with a sharpness that was rare in Indian comedy at the time. His material wasn't designed for easy laughs. It was crafted to make audiences think, question, and sometimes squirm in their seats. Kamra's comedy evolved into something more akin to political theatre than traditional stand-up. His performances became platforms for incisive social commentary, blending humor with hard-hitting analysis of current events. This approach quickly garnered attention, both positive and negative, as he began calling out specific politicians, media personalities, and powerful institutions by name. Unlike many comedians who veil their critiques in vague references, Kamra named names, making himself an immediate target for backlash while simultaneously building a loyal following among young, politically engaged Indians hungry for unfiltered commentary. His rise coincided with India's growing social media culture, where his brand of provocative humor found an ideal platform for rapid dissemination and viral impact. The defining moment in Kamra's career came in November 2019 during his now infamous confrontation with news anchor Arnab Goswami aboard a flight. Kamra filmed himself heckling Goswami, accusing him of biased journalism and calling him a coward to his face. The video spread like wildfire across social media, sparking intense national debate about the boundaries of free speech, civility, and media accountability. Supporters hailed Kamra as a bold truth-teller holding powerful figures to account, while critics condemned his actions as harassment and unprofessional behavior. The fallout was immediate and severe. Multiple Indian airlines banned Kamra from their flights, a move that raised serious questions about corporate censorship and the right to dissent. This incident transformed Kamra from being just another comedian into a symbol of resistance against what many saw as growing authoritarianism in Indian media and politics. Kamra's legal troubles began mounting as his profile grew. He faced multiple first information reports for his social media posts and comedy routines, with charges ranging from defamation to sedition, an alarming trend that highlighted the shrinking space for dissent in India. In 2021, he found himself in a high-profile contempt of court case for tweets mocking the Supreme Court's decisions, a battle that became emblematic of the tensions between free expression and judicial authority in India's democracy. These legal challenges only seemed to strengthen Kamra's resolve as he turned each court appearance into an opportunity for public commentary about the state of civil liberties in the country. His willingness to face potential jail time for his jokes earned him both admiration from free speech advocates and condemnation from those who viewed his actions as reckless provocations. Beyond stand-up, Kamra expanded his influence through digital media with his podcast Shut Up Ya Kunal, where he conducted lengthy, no-holds-barred interviews with politicians, activists, and journalists. These conversations stood in stark contrast to the sanitized exchanges typical of mainstream Indian media, featuring Kamra's characteristic bluntness and refusal to softball questions to powerful guests. The podcast became particularly popular among younger audiences disillusioned with traditional news sources, further cementing Kamra's reputation as an alternative voice in India's media landscape. His interviews often went viral, sometimes for their insightful revelations and other times for their heated exchanges, but always generating the kind of unfiltered political discourse rarely heard on television. Kamra's impact on Indian comedy has been profound, paving the way for a new generation of satirists willing to tackle political themes with similar fearlessness. Before Kamra, political humor in India largely avoided direct criticism of specific politicians or institutions, preferring safer, more generalized jokes. Kamra demonstrated that audiences were hungry for comedy that named names and confronted power directly, inspiring other comedians to push boundaries in their own work. This shift mirrored global trends where comedians like Jon Stewart and John Oliver had influenced political discourse through satire, but Kamra's version was distinctly Indian, adapting to the country's unique political climate and censorship challenges. The controversies surrounding Kamra reveal much about India's contemporary political culture. His frequent legal troubles highlight the precarious state of free speech in the world's largest democracy, where jokes can lead to criminal charges and public figures increasingly use defamation laws to silence critics. The polarized reactions to Kamra, with some viewing him as a vital truth teller and others as a dangerous provocator, reflect the deep divisions in Indian society. His supporters see him as performing an essential democratic function by holding power to account through humor, while his detractors argue he crosses lines of civility and national loyalty. This dichotomy makes Kamra one of the most interesting cultural figures in modern India, as his career serves as a barometer for the country's evolving relationship with dissent and free expression. Kamra's personal background adds another layer to understanding his comedic persona. Coming from a conventional middle-class family, but rejecting its expectations, he represents a new breed of Indian youth unwilling to conform to traditional career paths or political quietism. His engineering degree and corporate experience give him an outsider's perspective on both the comedy world and political commentary, allowing him to challenge orthodoxies in both spheres. This background helps explain his fearlessness in the face of backlash, having already defied family and societal expectations to pursue comedy. Standing up to political and legal pressure becomes a natural extension of that independent streak. The substance of Kamra's comedy often focuses on highlighting hypocrisy in Indian public life, whether in politics, media, or the judiciary. His routines meticulously dissect contradictions in official statements, biased media coverage, and the gap between political rhetoric and reality. This approach has made him particularly popular among urban, educated millennials who consume news critically and appreciate satire that reflects their own skepticism toward official narratives. However, It has also limited his appeal among more conservative audiences who view his comedy as disrespectful or anti-national, illustrating how comedy in India has become another battleground in the country's culture wars. Kamra's relationship with social media is particularly noteworthy. Unlike comedians who use platforms primarily for promotion, Kamra engages in constant, real-time commentary on current events, treating Twitter as an extension of his comedy stage. This approach has amplified his voice tremendously, but also made him vulnerable to instant backlash and legal action. His tweets often spark immediate controversies, with some leading to police complaints within hours of posting. This dynamic demonstrates both the power and peril of social media for political satirists in India, while provides an unprecedented platform for bypassing traditional media gatekeepers. It also exposes creators to rapid, often disproportionate consequences for their speech. The economic aspects of Kamra's career reveal the financial risks inherent in political satire. Unlike mainstream comedians who can secure lucrative corporate gigs and endorsements, Kamra's controversial reputation limits his commercial opportunities. His income streams primarily come from ticket sales to his shows, which often face last-minute cancellations due to pressure, YouTube revenue from his podcast, vulnerable to demonetization, and direct support from fans. This financial precariousness underscores the challenges facing independent voices in India's creative industries, where taking political stands can have direct economic consequences. Internationally, Kamra's work invites comparisons to political satirists like George Carlin or Bill Hicks, who similarly used comedy as a vehicle for social critique. However, the Indian context makes Kamra's position uniquely precarious. Where Western satirists generally face social or professional consequences for controversial material, Indian comedians like Kamra risk actual legal prosecution, reflecting the more constrained environment for free speech in the country. This distinction makes Kamra's continued outspokenness all the more remarkable, as he persists despite knowing each joke could potentially lead to a court case. Looking forward, Kamra's career trajectory will likely continue to mirror India's democratic health. If space for dissent continues shrinking, he may face increasing legal and professional obstacles. Conversely, if democratic norms strengthen, his brand of satire could become more mainstream. Either way, Kamra has already left an indelible mark on Indian comedy, proving that humor can be a potent form of political speech even in challenging environments. His legacy may ultimately be less about individual jokes and more about demonstrating the power of comedy to challenge authority and speak uncomfortable truths, a lesson with profound implications for Indian democracy.